This is the ELPAC preparation video for reading number 2. This passage has 4 paragraphs and 4 questions. Remember, the first thing you do is you look at the questions. So the first question, it's marked here as question 17. Question 17 says, what is the main idea of the text? So obviously, we have to read the whole thing in order to really understand that. Question 18 says, read this sentence from paragraph 2. It quotes the sentence, and then it says, what does the word extended most likely mean in this sentence? To be honest, you probably don't even need to read the passage in order to get this one right. You have the sentence there. As long as you understand what the sentence is trying to say, you could probably get it right. So when I see something like that, I don't answer it right now. I wait for the end. I answer this one last because it would be better to read the article before I answer it, even though I don't have to. So I'm not really going to be looking for anything for 18 when I do my reading. Question 19. Why does the author mention Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony? So it's got 2 names. I would underline those names if this was in front of me on the test, because I'm going to be looking for those names. And when I read through, I'm definitely going to find them, Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony. I'm going to underline them when I come across them. All right, so we're looking for the main idea, and we're looking for Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony. Let's read question 20. Which sentence from the text best describes how people voted in the past? This one as well, you can probably answer right now just by looking at it, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for this one. I'm not going to make an assignment or something that I'm looking for question 20. So there are, it looks like, about 2 of these questions that I need to read the article to get right. So we're looking for what is the main idea, and we're looking for the names Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony. So let's go ahead and do the reading now. And as we go through, you're going to be looking for those 2 things. All right, what is the main idea, and looking for those names, and this will help us answer those questions. Today, voting for government officials is a special right shared by United States citizens who are 18 years old and older. Each person can vote only once in an election, and voting is done in secret. That means voters do not have to tell anyone who they voted for. Although some practices remain the same, some voting practices have changed over time. A long time ago, in order to vote, you had to be male and own land. This meant that only a small group of men could vote. Over time, the right to vote was extended to more and more people. This happened because of the hard work of people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony. With more people voting, new practices were needed. Years ago, voting looked very different than it does today. For many years, voting was not done in secret. Voters had meetings at public buildings. They would raise their hands or voices to show who they wanted to vote for. In some cases, voters would line up on different sides of a room to show who they were voting for. Today, voters go to polling sites where they can vote. In some states, voters mark their choices on paper slips called ballots. Some people even send in their ballot by mail. In other places, paper ballots have been replaced with voting machines. As new technologies are created, voting will probably continue to change. Now let's look at question 17. What is the main idea of the text? At this point, before I even read the options, I would think to myself, well, what would I say is the main idea of this text? It talks a lot about voting. So right now, think about what you would say in one sentence to summarize that article we just read. Now let's look at the answers. A, United States citizens who are adults can vote. B, voting practices have changed over time. C, more people are voting than ever before. D, technology will allow people to vote in different ways. Go ahead and make your guess. So how'd you do? The correct answer was B. Voting practices have changed over time. Let's go through and see why it wasn't the other ones. It's not A because United States citizens who are adults can vote, well, that's just a detail. That's just some information. C, more people are voting than ever before. It mentioned that, but the whole passage wasn't about the numbers of people who have voted, and they could. It was mentioned, but it wasn't the main idea. And it wasn't D, technology will allow people to vote in different ways. They only mentioned technology at the very, very end. So it's B, voting practices have changed over time, because it started with a long time ago, right? Well, the second paragraph, you notice, said a long time ago, this beginning of the third paragraph, years ago, and the first and fourth paragraph both begin with today. So it's talking about time and it's talking about voting. So that was the main idea of the whole thing, that voting practices have changed over time. All right, so I'm actually going to skip question 18 if I was taking this test, because remember, that one I can kind of do on its own. I'm going to do question 19 while the article is still fresh in my mind. So question 19 says, why does the author mention Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony? And then here are the options. A, they were part of a small group of voters. B, they worked hard to win elections. C, they invented the secret ballot. And D, they helped many people become voters. So go ahead and answer the question. You already underlined or marked where these two people were named in the article. So look at where they were mentioned and why, and then answer the question. All right, so the correct answer was D. They helped many people become voters. And the key here was in the sentence right before the sentence they were mentioned in. In the sentence right before, it said, over time, the right to vote was extended to more and more people. This happened because of Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony. So it's not A, B, or C. Didn't mention that they were a part of a small group of voters. Kind of talked about some small groups of voters, but they definitely weren't part of it. They worked hard to win elections. Didn't mention that they were running for election. And it definitely wasn't C, they invented the secret ballot. I didn't really mention anything about who invented the secret ballot. So that one, the correct answer was D. So now that I've done the two that I took notes on, I'm going to go to those other two questions that I could have really answered on their own. So go ahead and answer those two right now. Question 18. Read this sentence from paragraph 2. Over time, the right to vote was extended to more and more people. What does the word extended most likely mean in this sentence? Well, having read the article, it helps me answer this. Though just looking at it, you can make the guess that the correct answer is C, given. So over time, the right to vote was given to more and more people. Here, just use the answer you think it is and replace it with the word that's underlined. Does it work for continued? Over time, the right to vote was continued to more and more people. That makes sense. Over time, the right to vote was straightened to more and more people. Definitely not. Or D, over time the right to vote was shown to more and more people. Maybe, but given is one that makes the most sense. Looking at question 20, which sentence from the text best describes how people voted in the past? A, although some practices remain the same, some voting practices have changed over time. B, with more people voting, new practices were needed. C, they would raise their hands or voices to show who they wanted to vote for. And D, in other places, paper ballots have been replaced with voting machines. Remember, we're looking for the sentence that best describes how people voted in the past. That's got to be C. C says they would raise their hands or voices to show who they wanted to vote for. The other ones come close, but C is the one that best describes how it's voted in the past. All right, D talks about other places. B talks about, new practices were needed, but it doesn't mention what those practices were. And A, some practices remain the same, some practices have changed over time, also doesn't give us what it is. It doesn't give us any description, and that's what the question was asking for, describes. So that's it. See, it's not too scary. Don't look at all this and think, I can't do it, because you can. First, Identify the questions you need to read the article to answer, and then go to the other questions and do the best you can. Take your time, stay focused, and you'll be able to do just fine.